All right, we are at Orchard Park High School. The date is October 24th, 2006, and we are interviewing Bernard W. DePasquale, who is a military veteran. The interviewers are,
My name is Tyler Mathews. I'm a senior at Orchard Park High School.
Brent Scofield, senior.
Joe Jacobs, senior.
okay. Have a good time, learn a lot about life in the military, and we'll see you in a while.
Why don't you start off by telling us, were you drafted or did you actually enlist into the force?
No, actually, I had signed up for the military right after I had originally had a scholarship for football out of high school. Was injured and couldn't play the game anymore, so I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I decided to follow my father's footsteps and join the Navy, just like he did years prior. So that's how I got started on June 20th of 1974.
Can you remember where you were living at the time?
Yeah, I was living in Lackawanna. Actually, I just gotten out of like I said, just gotten out of school, and I was living on East Milner with my parents. Not sure what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go in life at that point. Wasn't sure if I wanted to pursue a college education any further. So I said, while I was deciding that, I would get into the military, see what trainings they had available, and decide from there if it was something that I wanted to get involved with outside of the military.
What branch did you join when you first enlisted?
Originally, I went in June of '74 into the Navy, active Navy. I stayed originally to stay in for just a 4-year tour.
Right.
Ended up spending 16 years on the active side of the military, and decided at the age of 40 to get out and pursue a civilian career. Was discharged from the military, the active Navy side, in February of 1990.
Why did you choose to join that branch at that time? What made you choose?
Actually, it was kind of ironic because my father's footsteps and mine have kind of paralleled in life. He was a ball player, baseball player, not a football player, but I was a baseball player also. And he went into the Navy, and I thought it was a good thing, a good way for me to see the world, be able to travel around and see other cultures, see how other people lived. And it was you work, but it's more of a free trip. I've seen probably more of the world than most people have seen in a lifetime in just a matter of 16 short years. So it was a great experience as far as that goes.
What really stuck out to you when you were traveling that much? What was the one thing that really you remembered a lot?
Well, the one thing I really enjoyed was the seeing the other cultures and how other people lived. People in the States take things for granted. I mean, but if they get outside of the realm of America, and they get to see some of these other foreign countries and how people actually lived and how they're ruled and how they're treated, and how valuable assets such as food is. I mean, it actually gives you a different perspective on what life is really like and how valuable it is to be here. What we really have compared to what they have.
Did you have any specific assignments or jobs when you were serving in the Navy?
Yeah, which actually I went into the service. I had, with being in the service 16 years, I had quite a few different jobs. My main function was I was an administrative kind of guy, which kind of threw people off. I would show up to ships. I was a big bodybuilder, football player, like I mentioned before. And when I would report for duty on the variety of units that I was being assigned to, they'd ask me what my job was, and I'd tell them I was a yeoman. And basically all that is you work for the commanding officer and the executive officer for that command. But I basically did a lot of typing and filing. So they were looking at me going, "You got to be kidding me." No, that's what I do.
What were the first couple days like out in service?
Well, the first couple days, when you start off at basic training, that's what everybody has to go through, which was in Great Lakes, Illinois. That's a whole different environment altogether. You get a taste of what not being in control of your life is really like. The first day you're there, they fly you on a plane. They get you, once you get to the airport, they pick you up on a bus. As soon as you arrive, it's kind of like watching the movies. You put your feet on the steps. You got to stand a certain way. They're screaming at you as soon as you get there.
Yeah.
You can't talk back. You can't. You're being basically told everything you're going to be doing to do. And within a matter of 48 hours, you got the buzz cut, and your uniforms are gone. They ship your civilian clothes home to your parents, and the guy that's going to be in charge of your unit says, "Listen, I'm your mother, your brother, your girlfriend, your family, whatever. So get to know me really well." So it's a culture shock kind of thing. But I was prepared for that, I think, because of sports. I was used to doing that kind of stuff.
think a lot of people always wonder what's the food like in basic training and stuff like that.
The food actually isn't as bad as people make it out to be. They have regular cooks in the service just like they do anywhere else, and you get 3 meals a day, you know, regular chicken and steak and corn and whatever. Now, if you're over heavy, I mean, if you're on a weight control program, then they kind of limit to your calorie intake. I mean, military is just like anybody else. But the food isn't that bad. It really isn't. If you want the best food, if you ever want to go into the military, guys, go into the sub corps. They get the best food there is.
Subcorps, huh?
Keep that in mind.
Now, did you ever get a chance to go into combat, or were you?
I volunteered during the Vietnam era. I went in during that time frame, but I didn't actually go into theater there because by the time I'd finished my basic training and I'd finished my schooling, my MOS, what they call your skill training, that was just about over. It was in June of, I finished that in January of 75, so shortly thereafter the Vietnam, everybody was being pulled out at that point. However, during the course of my 16 years active duty, I was involved with Grenada. When Grenada went down, we were assigned to a ship then, and what our job was to circle the island of Grenada, keeping the militants from trying to get on the island to create more problems than they had already had. And that was something that was interesting to see.
Did you have anyone close to you pass, or was injured in the combat, or?
No, we didn't have anybody injured in combat when I was there, but I did have a friend of mine who was actually killed on board the ship. What happened was we were in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and we were doing what we call underway replenishment, where they take another ship and you're side by side, about 100 yards apart or less, and they're pumping fuel into your ship so that you can continue on with your mission. And I remember this vividly. A very good friend of mine and I were on the fantail, which is the back end of the ship, and all of a sudden we seen this big cloud of black smoke come out of the stack, and we said, we're going to general quarters. And next thing you know, the bells were ringing and everybody's scampering around trying to get to their spot. And what happened was that when they went to disconnect the fuel line snapped in our engine room, and the bolts broke free, and it hit the bulkhead and sparked, and at the same time thousands and thousands of gallons of fuel were being pumped into this space, and it ignited the fuel, and one of our friends actually did his job by shutting down the engines, and by the time he got done shutting down the engines, everything was on flame, stairs were already melted away, and he ended up dying in that fire. So it's a dangerous, I mean, you're 800 miles from anywhere, so you're looking around, you're like, man, I can't believe this is going on, where am I going to go? So you survival, when they're out there, you learn a lot of basic firefighting skills out there.
Sure.
Now I understand you served on multiple different battleships, and I was wondering what would be a typical day in the life of a naval guy on one of those?
Well, it depends. If you're in port and you're not really underway, it's pretty much like a normal work day. The difference being you don't go in and punch a clock from 8 to 5. You're there. You get paid on a 24-hour clock. So whenever your bosses, so to speak, or your supervisors tell you can leave, that's when you could actually depart and be with your family or friends, or just go to your bunk and relax, or wherever. When you're out to sea, it's a different thing, but you still carry on an everyday routine. It's like a little city on a city. I mean, everybody's got their jobs. I worked in the administrative field, I worked with officer records, I worked with correspondence, I worked with classified documents, so on and so forth, legal paperwork, stuff like that. I mean, it's a regular functioning operational unit. And you have different side jobs that you get involved with, like underway replenishment. I was the phone talker, what they call sound part phone. For the commanding officer, everything he said, I relayed to everybody on the ship. That was my job. I was the legal yeoman. What that means is that anybody that was ever brought up on charges within the military justice system, not the civilian system, the military system, a different set of rules, or UCMJ, I would take care of the paperwork, and I would attend the hearings and whatnot, and finalize the paperwork for that. I would bring officers on board. I would transfer them off. I would take care of housing orders, so on and so forth. But it was interesting. You get to look at a lot of correspondence. Some of the stuff I can't talk about because it was classified, but that's the area that I worked in for the most part.
While you were out there, how did you communicate with your family, or was there any way you went back and forth?
Yeah, we had initially when I went out to see what we did was basic letter. You would write letters home. You could send tape recordings home to your families, that kind of stuff. And it gets to be, that's probably the roughest part of being a ways that you don't have any communication where you can call somebody like you do here. You would have to wait for the mail to come. Being out to sea, obviously, it was not delivered. But when you would have these unreps or replenishment details, they would send the bags over through these ships, and that's when you would get your correspondence. And then as time progressed and the communications network started to improve, we were actually able to communicate with our loved ones via radio. They would have the ham radios, the ham operators, and they would connect us to our family so we could talk to them for a few minutes at a time. But other than that, there wasn't any communication at all.
So how did you, how do you think that helped you get through life as, you know, with your experiences? How do you think that's helped you in, you know, later years?
Doesn't even make me sound old. No, just kidding. Actually, I'll tell you what. You know, my personal belief is I personally believe that everybody should spend at least a couple years in the military, because people don't realize how good they really have it until that's taken away from them. I mean, you can complain about school, you can complain about college, you can complain about your parents, you can complain about a lot of things. But when you start getting into these other areas where you don't have control, and when you're when you're out to sea, for example, you really don't have control of what's going to happen. You kind of hope things go well, but you really don't have control. You grow up quickly. You learn to take responsibility for your actions because you're responsible for you. I was one of the fortunate ones. I was always in charge of a group of people, so I was. That could be a good thing and a bad thing, because everything that comes down through the top guy, down to the ranks, that kind of thing. It teaches you to be a leader. It teaches you not to make excuses, you know, for things that don't go right. Things that go wrong, you don't make excuses, because they're going to find out about it, because it's just a very small community. So I think it helps, especially when you go into the other countries. And that's the thing. When you get to these other countries and you see how these people live, and even though we're gone, when you get back, you appreciate being there that much more.
Sure.
Did you meet any lifelong friends in the military or anything?
Yes, actually I have. In fact, I have a very, very good friend of mine. His name is Gary Kelly, who lives in West Virginia, and I have another very good friend of mine whose name was Dan Hilberry. We had actually lost contact for 15 years, and we had just reached each other again, and we're planning a reunion based on our friendship, because we were the three that kind of hung around. We were kind of like the Three Musketeers at that time. We went everywhere ashore together, we partied together, that kind of stuff. And you know, those kind of friends, I don't call people in the military, I don't think you get really close to a lot of friends. I think you make acquaintances and you get to know people, but there's, you know, like even high school, there's maybe, or college, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 people, or a handful at the most, that you really get to be close with and you're able to keep in contact with. And I think that's the most part. You find those people when you're there.
What did you guys do while you were out there to kind of keep yourselves entertained in your downtime?
Downtime in the military, pretty much you're practicing firefighting drills, flood drills. For example, for that fire we had on the ship, if we hadn't practiced what we were going to do, we could have all, you know, died in that particular incident. When you're out to sea, they have a movie night. They show movies on the mess decks. That's the area where you eat. That's where you eat during the day. You play cards. You learn how to play all kinds of card games and board games and stuff like that. But other than that, when you're talking about being able to move and have flexibility, you don't have that, because your ship is only maybe 500 feet wide by 75 or 560 feet long by 70 feet wide, and that's it. You know, other than that, it's just compartments and spaces that you need to work with. So you try to find things to do. I mean, a lot of times it's boring. You read. You have a tendency to read a lot of books and stuff like that to keep up with the news if you can.
Were there boxing matches and stuff like that? So I've seen movies.
Well, they do have those. We did that in basic training. In fact, I was one of the boxers in basic training.
Really?
I'm not going to tell you the results, but I held my own, let's put it that way. But they do have certain things. They do have, and our particular ships are the ones that I was assigned to. We didn't have like a boxing club or anything like that. We did have a weight room. We did have a rugby team for when we went overseas. We did have softball teams. We had volleyball teams and stuff like that. So we try to keep ourselves entertained as much as we can, you know, with what we have. So, especially when you're going to hit foreign ports, I think one of the best times was playing rugby against the English sailors, because we got to go to England several times, and they whipped us wholeheartedly. Let me tell you, it was a massacre. It really was.
We're gonna go into some of the photographs.
Yeah, I could show you a couple things here. This is the USS Albany. This is the first ship I was assigned to. Now, you have to imagine, you know, being an 18-year-old guy coming out of college, getting off of a taxi cab or getting out of a taxi cab in Virginia, going to the naval base, and looking up at a CG-10, which is a guided missile cruiser. And this is actually the sister ship of the ship that's in our harbor here in Buffalo.
Oh, okay.
The USS. Oh my goodness, what's the name of that ship? Little Rock. USS Little Rock is the ship, the sister ship. I could actually take you on the Little Rock and show you exactly where I worked, where all the spaces are, where the offices are, stuff like that. This was the first one, but you're looking at a ship and you're looking straight up and you see nothing but this big, massive steel, and not knowing anybody there, not knowing how to go onto the ship, where you're supposed to go. So it's a pretty interesting thing. From there, I was transferred to the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, and I got on board what they call a DD destroyer, the 940, USS Manly 940 out of Philadelphia, and then was further home ported once they had done all the repairs on the ship, because we were in dry dock down in Mayport, Florida, where we had done that. And then the last ship I was on was the one of the newest ships that they have is called the fast frigate, the FFG 34, the Aubrey Fitch. The special things about this ship that I really enjoyed was, number one, it wasn't the old style oil burning ships. It was a gas turbine, so you could be underway just a matter of minutes. You didn't have to wait for the engines to warm up and take a couple days and so on and so forth. But these are the things that you really enjoy. But there are some there's some like I say this difficulties that you deal with everything. I mean, you were talking, you asked if I had lost anybody in any of them. And on one of the ships I was on, the Manly, we were down in at our what we call refresher training, going through our gunnery exercises, and our actual gun mount actually exploded and actually killed one of our officers and one of our enlisted men, and so on and so forth. So it's a dangerous position, so you always have to be aware of what's going on. So you have that. I'm going to show you. This is a photo. I was 18 years old. Just starting to get my facial hair. I thought I was a hot shot. This is when the military would allow you to have mustaches and beards. And that's me at 18 when I first went into the service. I don't know how well that's coming up, but that's when I was a young, strapping young sailor. Thought I was all that when I went in. And then I have a photo. Actually, this is an old photo. This is of my dad and my two brothers. All of us are veterans. We were all in the military. And we had every branch of the service covered. My dad was in the Navy. I went into the Navy. My brother Jerry went to the Marine Corps, and he retired as a major in the Marine Corps. My brother Jeff went into the Air Corps. He worked in Minot, North Dakota, on the missile silos with air conditioning and so on and so forth. And then I went from the Navy to the Army National Guard, where I was involved with the cleanup of 9/11. I had a crew for that. And the other person that's missing, actually two people that are missing, are my daughter Lori, who went into the Army and fought in Iraq, left a 4.5-month-old and a 4-year-old baby behind to go fight for her country, because that's what she was doing. And now her boyfriend is just come back from a second tour and is a Purple Heart recipient. He was wounded when he was there. So history of the military for us seems to be part of our blood, that kind of our bloodline, that kind of thing. One of my favorite pictures, and one that I always try to show people, is this one here. This is taken in October of 1982. It was the commissioning ceremony of the USS Aubrey Fitch out of Bath, Maine. My dad was there, I was there, but the keynote speaker for that particular commissioning ceremony at that time was Vice President George Bush, before he became president. So that was an experience all in itself. I mean, you had to go through, high levels of security, and the guests had, and it was funny because when my dad had called and said, "What's the weather like of Maine?" I said, "It's beautiful. It's 80 degrees. It's sun shining." And the day of ceremony, it went to 32, and it was storming and raining. It was miserable out, but that was the thing. Some of the other things I have is this is what we call our ribbon, our cabbage, or salad, we call it. The top one here is my my Navy Achievement Medal awards. I actually received 3 Navy Achievement Medals when I was with the Navy. Good conduct medals. For those of you that know me a little better than others, they would be surprised to know that I could receive a good conduct medal. National Defense Ribbon, Expeditionary Force Medal, Expert Rifle, Expert Pistol, and the last one I received right before I retired was my 3rd Army Achievement Medal. So those are the ones that I'm most proud of that I received all those days. And it's just for distinguishing yourself, for your unit, for things that you've accomplished while you were there. I can show you some of those. I have a box of stuff here that I could show you, but it would probably take longer than you guys have to interview me. The one that I do have, and I'll just, this is one of the things that you get. This is the Department of the Army Army Achievement Medal, and it's basically for achievement in establishing and operating the Morale, Welfare, and Recreational Center. The MWR Center is a success due to your continued efforts and dedication and service to your peers. In addition, while serving in the retention as the non-commissioned officer and the field first sergeant, which is what I was assigned at that time, displayed your leadership qualities. Your dedication to duty reflects great credit upon yourself and the unit and the state of New York and the National Guard. So these are the kind of things that they recognize you when you do outstanding work. They get together. They have to have. What happens is your boss or your supervisor has to submit a medal request or a letter request or whatever he wants to put you in for, It goes through this big chain scanning process, like a job interview kind of thing, and they say, okay, does he meet all the criteria that he needs to have? And then if they feel that you dedicated yourself or earned that, then they go ahead and they give it to you and issue you a medal. So that's some of the stuff that I really appreciated. For you getting a pat on the back for doing a job that you needed to do.
As a veteran, is there anything that you could tell young people that are considering going into the service? Any advice, any warning, anything like that?
I wouldn't give them any warnings, and I'll tell you why. Because I think, like I mentioned earlier, I think that everybody should spend at least a year or two in the military. I think it's a great experience for kids, especially for those that aren't sure what they want to do with their life. It gives them an opportunity to see what's out there. It doesn't necessarily have to be the Navy or the Army or the Marine Corps or the National Guard. It could be any branch of service. But there's GI Bills out there that you can get for that. They'll pay for your education when you get out, so on and so forth. I think that when you go there, if you find the reason why I went into the Navy more than any other branch is because they do a lot of traveling, and that was something that I wanted to do.
Right.
And without that, I wouldn't have seen the things that I've seen. I've been across the North Atlantic 4 or 5 times, in the Caribbean 3 or 4 times. So the stuff that I've seen that people will never ever get to see, and I've seen on numerous occasions. So it's a great experience to actually just get out and see where other people live.
I don't know. I think that pretty much wraps it up.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Yeah.
Not a problem.
Absolutely. Oh, we gotta
Wait for them to say it's over, huh? But
Well,
I'll tell you
I
one.
don't think-
I'll tell you one of the things that I will share with you guys that they have sporting events and so on and so forth with the military, but the one thing that you really find that really cements and puts things together is like when you have a 9/11 and you see when people all come together. I was actually working as a personal trainer when that all went down, and was with the National Guard unit. And when I seen the second plane hit the World Trade Centers, I told the person I was training, I said, I gotta go. And found by the time I got to New York, because my drilling unit was out of Yonkers, which was about 20 miles from where the incident happened, I was assigned to night crew, and we were sending people down there all the time on a regular basis. But you'd be surprised at how people just come together at that point. I mean, it's an amazing thing. The other thing that one of the stories that really hits home for me is when we were over in St. Martin, I believe, visiting there. And a bunch of us got together and we bought some Kentucky Fried Chicken. We found a place there to get it. And we got done eating and we threw our boxes away like we normally would. And this little 11-year-old boy from there went in and took all of those Kentucky Fried Chicken boxes out of the garbage can, literally out of the garbage can. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you think we picked that? We think we eat the stuff. I mean, this kid literally picked that bone to the bone. I mean, he was going after everything. It was uncanny to see what they were doing, the stuff that they don't have that we just take for granted. That's a really good experience. I mean, I would recommend it to anybody. I really would.
That's great.
Thank you.
All right.
Not a problem.
Yeah, thank you.
I wish I had more to show you, but I guess I had more, but I got. Hi, how are you?
Nice to see you.
Hey, how are you doing?
Good.
Good.